Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Meadows and Makers podcast. I'm your host, Greg Dowd, also known as Making Stuff in the Hive community. Welcome to the show tonight. This show is all about trying to teach some lessons on self reliance and some of the lessons learned from things that I've done, and then just trying to bring on cool guests to talk to you guys and try to bring you some actionable skills and some things that might be able to help you out in your life. Tonight, I have on a local friend from I met from our group, local group for mutual aid and our little mutual aid society in my town. And tonight, he is the founder of the Monkey's Wrench Maker Space in Huntsville, Alabama. I have my friend Chris Walls on the podcast tonight. Welcome, Chris. How are you?
I'm awesome, Greg. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on the podcast with me and kind of, share your journey a little bit with my audience to get to know you a little bit better. And so I appreciate you taking the time.
It's all my honor, man. Pleasure to be here. Glad to talk about it. You and I can talk about this stuff for hours, can't we?
Yeah, we were chatting about that a little bit. Yeah, it's been one of my passions is DIY type stuff and being a maker. And so when you presented that you were going to open a local makerspace, I was all about it and super on board. So I'm glad that you've got this going on, and so yeah, I usually start off the podcast by having you talk a little bit about yourself and kind of let people know, who you are and how did you get to the point where you wanted to start a makerspace?
Shoot, I'm kind of old, Greg. This could take a minute. Started off, moved around quite a bit. I moved around as a young man, probably 17 times, all over, mostly Illinois and Texas, and ended up graduating outside of Buffalo there in New York. Um, so already going to different places. One of the consistencies in my life was had a great grandfather I was named after, had a farm. So some of my best memories as a kid is being out on that farm and shoot, you were just running around with the animals, 80 acres and playing with equipment. They used to race horses with the carriages, if you remember those things. Um, I
Yeah,
think I
no, well,
remember.
not really.
Yeah, we used to do the make sauerkraut and butter and a lot of other stuff out there on the farm. Now it's fond memories. I at about 9 years old, I moved away from all of that. So for me, I remember all the good times, not necessarily all the hard work there. So don't want to take away from all the work that goes on a farm. But I do remember you would get snowed in, and everything you had is what you had out there on that farm, and you had to take care of it. A lot of skills. So as we moved away from that, I ended up joining the military at 17. I had five sisters at the time, and it seemed like a good idea to leave the house. They were all teenagers, uh, so I joined the military, and in the Air Force, I gained a lot of electronics experience and electrical experience, working on A10s and C-130s and all that whatnot. So I'm pretty happy with that experience, and got to see the rest of the world and how other countries go about doing stuff. Spent a couple years in Italy and Germany and England, and one glorious year in Korea, as we like to say. So learned a lot about other cultures, the things that they value, and the craftsmanship that they value in those cultures, what they do with stuff, and the history. Very fascinated with history. Ended up getting a degree in history. Wanted to be a museum director of all things. Was kind of one of my lifelong goals. So being a makerspace person is kind of the step that I made to get to that. Um, and I was just always fascinated how these ancient cultures had technologies that we still don't know how they did it. And trying to figure that out today is a hobby of mine, and a lot of the people that get involved in maker spaces, don't get me wrong, there's business people that get involved, and that is a target market for me. But people that are just tinkerers and want to go, well, how would you do that if you didn't have an electric saw? And you only had all of the old woodworking tools. And there's wonderful podcasters who go over all that stuff, which I love to just sit down and watch them work. And kind of in a nutshell, there's there. Now, my father had a construction company, was always good with his hands, as was my mother. They sewed and built and concrete and steel. So using your hands was part of the culture in our family from a very young age.
So you grew up on like a like kind of have a subsistence kind of farming background, or
Uh,
were
no,
were
I
you
wouldn't
guys?
go that way. The time I'm in there, the grandpa was my great grandfather. I was named after him, and the farm was kind of wrapping it up at that time. The next generation really wasn't involved in the farming, but we still had the horses and the hay, and they did the cart horse racing at the fairs, which was a big family event. And later in years, one of the cousins did get back into that for a while, so that was kind of, hey, horse racing's back in the family type of a thing. Um, but they we had big gardens. They canned stuff. We were 5 miles plus out in the middle of nowhere. The classic: take the paved road until you get to the gravel road. Take the gravel road until you get to the dirt road, and then you're 2 miles away.
Yeah. So yeah, when you were traveling around the world, you joined the Air Force. You said after, I guess, what after you left.
17. Yeah,
Really? Wow, you were really young.
yeah.
Wow. So what was your specialty when you were in the Air Force?
So for most of the career, I was electronic warfare or electronic countermeasures. So where the enemy's trying to shoot down the aircraft, we had the systems on the aircraft that countermeasured their targeting systems,
Oh wow.
be it surface to air missiles or air to air missiles, any of that. I was the maintainer that dealt with setting up the radar systems when I was younger, and then as I progressed in skills, I ended up getting involved with the electronic warfare pods that they would mount, and they would send out jamming signals, and we would go test those all over the world to prove that they actually did what they said they're going to do.
Oh wow, wow. So radar seems like I do have a buddy that does some radar stuff, and when he talks to me, I'm a fairly technical guy, but when he's talking to me, it's like he's saying some black magic stuff, man. It's like,
It has evolved by leaps and bounds. I'm still still read the old Crow magazine is kind of the group that is the EWOs and so forth, and the way the technology's evolved in the last decade is amazing. I mean, if you're not directly involved in it, you're way behind. So some of the times when you see these modern armies, people don't realize the advantage that you have with a modern warfare system.
yeah. The other day, I think I ran across a video that they were showing a EMP gun for drones or something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
That was pretty wild. I guess it like disrupts the signal of the drone, and it can allow it to basically lose its GPS, and then it has to like fall or whatever. But yeah, that stuff's pretty advanced now.
Yeah, there's some of the work that I do even to this day is we'll test the wiring systems for those systems. But if it's a military grade drone, then it should be hardened against an EMP type pulse, right? So those are favorite black swan events for preppers to go into. What does an EMP actually go in effect? And it's always fascinating to me. Uh, I don't even know how to test that. For if we were to do it at the makerspace, that would be a wonderful little test. Hey, let's build a little EMP and see what it impacts and what it doesn't. I know a lot of people write about that a lot of the time, but I would think it would be devastating to a drone. I agree.
Yeah, I just thought it was wild.
Yeah.
I was like, are they gonna shoot nets at it? What they're gonna do? It was like they were actually aiming an EMP device at it. That was interesting. So tell me a little bit about how this monkeys ranch came about. You've told me that it's operating kind of as a not for profit business. Is that how it is?
Uh,
If you want to
yeah, I
explain it a little bit to me.
you well, I found out you have to apply for that stuff. So some of this thing in the business world, a lot of becoming an entrepreneur, which this is the end of my entrepreneur route. Well, maybe I just was asked to figure something else out today, but as part of figuring something out, you get into this not-for-profit versus nonprofits. And the nonprofits, a lot of people are familiar with. I think it's the 5013C, which is like the charitable donation one that people can donate money to, and then they would get like a tax write-off or something like that. A lot of maker spaces or hacker spaces, there's a lot of different names for these fab labs. um, some of them have patents for their names and they mean specific things, but they're all kind of the same thing, a culture of making stuff and lifelong learning of skills and trades and all of that. But the nonprofit that we decided to go with was a 5017C, I believe. It's the membership driven nonprofit. And it just means that most of your money comes from memberships. And it's a private group in the sense that you need to be a member to get access to the equipment. And a lot of the reasons we chose to do that instead of making it a public venue is safety. People come in, you need to train them up on the equipment. A lot of the maker spaces are geared to kids first and adults second. We kind of did it the other way. We said, hey, we wanted to have a place where adults could come in and have all these big power tools floating around, and not as many kids run around, although we have families that come in and work together. But it's not like you have 30 kids run around at the same time. So that being said, we have offered, if somebody wants to do a class in the community, we would be more than open for, hey, come in and learn how to use a 3D printer. I mean, you'll see in our community, you're here in the Huntsville area, the libraries do a lot of that already. So there's 3D printers and CNCs, the machines that you put in an image and then it will cut the equipment, cut the product the way you want them to do it. So we did the nonprofit mostly because I already had a training business that made money and a couple other businesses that made money. So for me, this was more of a passion project. And I wanted all the members to know that, hey, we're coming in. We have a bunch of equipment. We did a little bit more grassroots. What do you think of our grassroots approach?
I like it, man. I mean, get the word out there. That's a big part of what we're doing tonight. Is like to get more people to know about the maker space in town, and if they want to join, how they can join, and all that kind of stuff. So
It, and part of that was encourage members to bring in their equipment. Uh, a lot of uh, a lot of people had great equipment but didn't have the space to set it all up in. You know, one of the advantages we had here is we ended up with 9,700 square feet, and we were able to segregate out a wood shop, and we'll be segregating out the metal shop and maybe a welding area outside a little bit, and then meanwhile we have the main hall, which is the one that I think you're most familiar with, where we're setting up a textile lab and electronics, and one I think you and I are both excited about. Well, two, the ham radio section, the receive section is all up now, so we're working on transmit now, and then uh, the the gardening and the aquaponics sections, which I think I maybe you may have some skill in that line and are going to kind of help us with that. I hope.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. So yeah, how would what was that process like for getting everything started? Was it how did you find a space that like a beautiful space for folks that are listening? That the makerspace is a very very large space, like plenty of room for different equipment and different areas in the building and everything like that. So could you talk a little bit about how that process went for you? Like, how did you find a building? What kind of paperwork did you have to start? Maybe a little bit about how that went.
Uh, yeah, actually, let me back up a couple years. So I had encountered maker spaces a few times in my past and thought it was a beautiful idea and always wanted to do one. And much like a bunch of my ideas, my wife Sasha, she came on, and my ideas would get taken by somebody else. I'm like, an idea isn't worth anything if you don't implement. So she, this makerspace idea, we moved to Huntsville, and it was still in the back, and I wanted to do something. And then people might remember Steamworks at Low Mill, and it was a 501(c), I believe, with the kids and focus for learning for 3 through 12 and all that. And it was set up, and Mr. Murdoch, boy, I think he put $1 million in and set it up with a wonderful facility, and it was running at a high peak there right before COVID. And then as a charitable group, it didn't survive during that drought of charitable donations during COVID, and it kind of went away. And that was what got me thinking about the membership model as a way to survive those sort of, keep it more level versus charitable donations. It's not, you can't take charitable donations, but the membership would be better. So I tweaked my idea a little bit, kind of thought of it more as a gym membership. And as part of that gym membership idea, I started looking for buildings. Um, I did it all myself for the first year. Couldn't find buildings at the price point you needed because you really needed industrial space. So think concrete floors, right? Because you got to anchor stuff to the floor. You're going to be making stuff all the time. You needed a lot of power, a good air system, air handling system, the sawdust. You know, you had to be able to deal with that. So you're thinking of all these factors and finding it. And I finally found a spot. I thought it was going to work. Went on a trip, came back, and they changed their mind. You'll love this. Did
Yeah.
I ever tell you why they changed their mind?
No, I don't know if I ever heard that. Why that happened?
They thought it was going to be too successful. Um, I never heard that in my life. It's like being overqualified for a job. So they said, no, this is a great idea. We think it's going to be successful, and we don't have the parking for that many people. And meanwhile, they
Uh,
had a big parking lot. So anyway, that went away, and that was pretty devastated. So instead of going through this 6 month to 12 month process again, I found a commercial real estate agent and explained it all. She had no idea really what a makerspace was, heard all my thoughts. We went and looked at a couple buildings, and this, I think, was probably the second or third building. And we pull up, and if you remember pulling up to the front, it doesn't look like much from the front, but then it just keeps on going, and it goes and it goes. And I'm like, wow, she really did get it. And it was at a price point that I felt we can hold. However, it was twice as big as what I originally wanted. So it was taken on a lot more upfront than what I intended. So the process is, you get the building. So now you got to get your business license. In this case, I filed for the state. You go to the state website to file for your EIN, and that's when I had to decide what not for profit or nonprofit status you wanted to be in. And then you go down that rabbit hole. You start researching. If you don't know anything about nonprofits or non for profits, you've got to go read up on all of them. And then you find out they're deep rabbit holes. So then you call anybody you know that has a nonprofit and say, hey, what does this mean? Um, at the end of the day, it came down for me, it was just simpler to do the 501(c) because it is a membership driven. It is exactly what we were trying to do, and doing the extra paperwork for the 503(c) and managing the board. And then I wanted to make sure that the place was stayed true to the skills trades type atmosphere that I wanted. I wanted to make sure that people don't need to go get a degree. I think degrees are wonderful, but there's plenty of skills you could go learn. And even people with a degree might want to go learn a skill that they don't know that has nothing to do with their degree.
well, I know we've talked about this in the past at our meetings that just having some kind of side hustle or something like that could be very important, especially now, with the cost of everything going up. If you have some kind of extra way to make money that you're not just relying on one source of income can be a benefit to people that are out there. You know, a lot of people that that I know are, you know, just relying on that one source of income, and you know, if they something messes up with payroll or something like that, they might run out of money for the month and just be kind of screwed. So I think it is pretty cool to be able to have a skill that you can fall back on, and then, you know, if you have a place that you can go and learn a new skill that, you know, that is relatively simple to get involved with, I think that it's super important.
And how many times have we heard stories about people finding their passion? And some of that time, having given yourself time to go find that passion is important. Hopefully, you went in and found a trade or got a profession or a job that provides income to put shelter over your head and take care of your family and all that. But at the end of the day, we all want to be doing what we like to be doing. So we definitely want to provide an area for that. I'm actually super excited for the textile lab, the sewing and the quilting and all that, because we want to start fixing our couches and our chairs, and you have to do all that upholstery repair. Once you figure out the carpeting side of it, then or the woodworking side of it, you still have to do the textile side of it. And have you bought a couch recently?
No, you know,
Oh,
every single couch I think I've ever owned, I've just found a free one. I think.
they're super proud of their couches. So it's just kind of one of those things. It's not even so much to making money. Think of how much money you can save because you have your own skills. That's something. Yeah. Shout out to my mom. She sews and makes a whole bunch of stuff. You can get gifts from her. You'll get her not so much the quilts, although she used to make books with quilts and she'd give them away. And yeah, all the money you don't spend because you have skills is just as valuable to you. But we have members here already who are making stuff out of the space and then selling it as a side gig. And some of them um, that they may quit their day job and do that full time if it gets to where they're doing enough of that.
Yeah, that's right. We were having one of our monthly meetings over there over there last month, and we got a demonstration from one of the members that is building some cool stuff by using. I guess he was showing us that he uses like Coca Cola and baking soda, and then he's got a microwave transformer and a couple of electrode leads, and we saw that fractal pattern grow along the
Did you manage to find
little
some
thing.
pictures of that you could show folks? Or
Yeah, I
yeah,
do. I
that
have
would
that
be
pulled
worth
up
seeing.
right
Yeah,
now.
this was phenomenal. I think it's a perfect example of all of the equipment that he has for that. He just found or dug it out of the trash. So there's no money invested into it. And then he has to buy, I think, the acrylic or the chemicals or whatever, and then the Coca-Cola and stuff. And then as part of that, it creates this pattern on this board, and it's all kind of random. And then he finishes the board, which, by the way, the board is just some boards that he found that people were throwing away or a tree that was cut down. And then he cleans them all up, and then he either makes somebody made fun of me calling it a charcuterie board. What do we call these in the South? There's a different word for it.
Oh yeah, I don't
Uh, some
charcuterie board. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. I don't. It's not that they call it a snack board or something. It's something real simple, and I loved it. I was like, okay, I'll start using this other name. But he makes tables, he makes bookshelves, and all of this is just one of his side gigs. It's probably the one he enjoys doing the most, but it just takes him a few hours probably to put these together, and no resources. So the overhead on this is very low. And then I think you could even see behind me a little bit. You see this floating barn wall that same gentleman was putting together, and that floating barn wall is right there. Yeah, and actually I'm sitting at that table there that you're looking at in the image. And then you'll see in the textile lab somebody made that Japanese figure there for Halloween.
Yeah, the Totoro.
Thank you. People keep telling me what the name of it is, and I'm so impressed that you know that. Um, he likes to go on record saying he actually made it before he saw the movie. He just thought the figure was cool. But that's what we want to encourage is people are in here making stuff, and it just so happened that several of our members in the beginning were part of the woodworking community, and then
Okay.
one of our members now is part of the ham community. So he's going back to your business question a little while ago. you, the next challenge is we want to do a transmit for the ham stuff. So figuring out what is the city ordinance for, can I put up a 30-foot tower or a 40-foot tower, and what all that entails.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
or do I need to do that? Can I just mount it on top of the roof? That you feel like you can do this or this, but you want to do the one that gives you the most. And here we're around NASA and Marshall Space Center here, so there's a lot of smart people.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I called my channel the Tinker Tribe, was because of all the unique people that were doing interesting stuff around my area, and I kind of felt like I wanted to try to showcase some of that stuff in the podcast, kind of being in a unique place here around all of the technology that's going on with the space industry here. Is a lot of like a lot of the NASA guys are around here with the Marshall Space Flight Center. I think Huntsville is like one of the um, highest concentrations of PhDs in the country or something like that. And
yep.
I've just going to engineering school here, knowing a lot of folks that are doing interesting stuff in their hobby and spare times. I'd like to try to showcase some of those things to folks and show them what can
So
be done.
if you pause over there at the Space Apps Challenge, you saw the picture of the little rocket going by, and then over there on the left on the photos, you see the Space Apps trophy. That's another example of just getting out and doing stuff. If people haven't done a hackathon before, um, we went and competed in the NASA Space Apps Challenge here in Huntsville. Urban Engine hosts that most every year, and they're a nonprofit here in town. And as part of that Space Apps Challenge, a hackathon, you're sitting down for 24 hours at most of them, and they've given you a problem to solve. Or in the case of NASA Space Apps Challenge, they've given you like 20 problems, pick one. And then they give you a little bit of a guideline, but mostly what they're trying to do is crowdsource a solution that they haven't thought of. Um, and the one we ended up taking on in this case was they wanted people to make a game that would explain all of the challenges for space travel. People think you can just throw money to travel to Mars and the problem be solved, but there's some legitimate troubles getting to Mars and living through it and coming back and being able to stand. Um, so, so we decided to make a game there, but we wanted to do it makerspace style. You see our little game night there. And as part of the makerspace style, we decided on a board game versus a video game. So we're getting ready here in a couple months. We'll even do a Kickstarter for that board game. And that little video was our teaser before the holidays. I think it's a little 15 seconds. There's another video on there that gives you the board game itself. But we're going to make the whole board game here for the Kickstarter. The first 100 board games we'll make out of the makerspace. And then we'll figure there again, how do you scale after that? But um, just coming out and finding challenges to solve is a big part of having a makerspace. Love those challenges.
Yeah, yeah, this is really cool. So I remember you describing to me a little bit about the board game, and that it's like kind of centered around space travel and all that kind of stuff. And that's what won you guys this little trophy, right? Is this
Yeah, we're
this?
very proud of our little trophy. But more importantly, we had a 13-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 40-year-old, and a 30-year-old all learning about the hazards of space travel, and then trying to, how do we teach somebody else, the challenges of radiation, and how do you overcome that in cosmic radiation versus, we think of nuclear radiation here on the planet here. But then you have the other factors of space travel. It's pretty hostile to be out in space.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. It's definitely not a friendly environment for humans to live in. I wanted to say hello to a couple of the folks that are in the chat room right now. Thank you guys for joining us. Rondon and Crimson Clad, good to see y'all. Um, we got a couple of comments just talking about the EMPs,
Yeah.
uh, saying that. Let's see. EMPs are somewhat problematic, is what Rondon's saying. They work with the inverse square law. When you hold a magnet away from a piece of metal and it has no attraction until a certain point, then it gets incredibly strong as you get closer. It's kind of like that. So, unless the EMP is incredibly powerful, you can just stay slightly away and it won't have an effect.
And I think it even matters what direction the electronics are, or the wiring is, to the wave that's coming at you too. Just going along with that inverse square law, I think there's something to do with the crossing of the wave that depends on how much of an impact it has also.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when getting into some of that kind of information. I know. Have you being a radar guy? Have you looked into like any of the like Nikola Tesla's work and some of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, in regards to EMPs, or just in regards to the technology itself?
Yeah, just some of his work in the
Uh,
past and
yeah, I'm kind of a fan of his. I'll go on record. I think one of his missions in life was to move humanity one generation forward faster than it would have otherwise. So he's saying, hey, I want to get a 20-year jump start on humanity. Would have been here in 100 years, but I want them to get there in 80 years. So that's kind of what he did. And he said it just requires a billionaire to decide to throw money at some of these problems to make it happen. So I think Tesla was a big thing on the electrical cars and getting batteries uh, built that could handle this power. I mean, think about it. People always want to go to net zero for consuming electricity, right? To where they can get all their electricity. They don't need to be on the grid and all that stuff. But then you have bad weather that happens. You have 20 days of rain and fuel shortages. So these batteries become critical for storing your power during that time. And I think Tesla's battery innovation is more important than the car innovation in some aspects. Um, and then I think Rivian is another one that's starting out. They have some interesting stuff going on over there. I think the whole thing is leading technology. I've also heard on the negative that if we actually did what we said and bought all these electrical vehicles, that the grid couldn't handle all of them hooking up to the grid. I find that fascinating. So, so how fast are we going to move forward on some of this? All of this stuff to me is very interesting, and I like watching it unfold. I'm not. I don't tend to be. What do they call it when you buy stuff first?
oh, a first adopter
A
or
first adopter. That's exactly the word. I don't tend to be a first adopter, but I like watching from the sidelines, and I could definitely be a second or a third adopter at this point. But I still like I still like my pickup truck. I'm sorry. So I don't think I'll be buying an electric car anytime soon.
Well, yeah, I was listening
Yeah.
to on a podcast earlier today that some of the older vehicles have actually increased in value because I think a big part is some of these chip shortages and things for some of the newer vehicles being produced. I think it was on Jack Spirko's podcast recently. He was talking about how right in the beginning, I think like right in 2020, he bought like a Dodge Charger, and now it's like increased in value because it's somewhat rare, I guess.
my 99 pickup truck is worth more than my wife's 2012 sedan.
That's all. That's pretty much all my
and,
all
and
my
I have
vehicles is
and
like.
it has a 500,000 miles on it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, they're easier to work on. There's not as much of the electronic stuff you have to troubleshoot. I had to replace a headlight piece on my Jeep,
hmm
and it was not that difficult to do. I had to resolder the connector, but it had melted down the entire connector where the headlight switch was, and so, but thankfully, that 90 it's a 99 Jeep, and it wasn't too difficult to replace that.
no, and people don't realize the wiring in this stuff does go bad. So eventually you're going to need to change out your wiring harness, or some other piece is going to melt, and you're probably better off changing it out before it melts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
But
that's what.
I love that you're working on your vehicles and stuff. The that was always fix your own stuff. And I think something with maybe these Teslas and some of these other vehicles, these modern vehicles, how much of it can we actually do anymore? I mean, I'm hearing it's just a software update for that Tesla. And
Well, that's
what are
the.
you agreeing to? You're checking the box that you agree to this software update. You don't know what it's doing.
Yep. Yep. We had a comment. So AJ Alger's in the audience saying it's important to buy a vehicle you can work on. I agree.
100% agree. Yeah, so we have in the back garage, we actually have two mechanics who've already joined. I don't think I'm going to go so far as to put a lift back there. I think there's plenty of places to get access to a lift, but we're going to have the jacks, and people can work on a car. I don't want to have the 30-day car project out there unless it's like a kit build or something that everybody's getting involved in, type of a thing. But if people have a project or they want to work on the car, they're more than welcome to bring their car here for a couple days and work on it. And more importantly, and I guess this is my biggest point, we have people here who would love to teach you how to work on your car.
Yeah.
So you've never changed out a starter. That's not a difficult task. In older cars, not going to speak to newer cars, um, and you and I will just pretend that older cars aren't you know that old. 90s is safe, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
90s and older maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking about that with my dad the other day. We were talking about, just offering that as a service or something on the weekends or something at his garage over here. Is that if somebody needs some basic things done, like just a tune up, rotate your tires or something like that.
Yep.
Just basic service type stuff that we could offer that, and then just pay for the parts, and then just get if you want to give us a gratuity or something like that to do that as a service for, especially the folks in our group or whatever. If you didn't
Yeah.
want to go take it into a shop or something like that, we could do it
Well,
because we
especially
have
if
those
they're helping
skills.
along. I mean, obviously you can't have them using the real high expensive tools or whatnot, but changing your tires and maybe helping out with a wrench and a screwdriver isn't going to injure anybody too badly. Um, you were making me think of some of these compression springs. Maybe you don't want them doing that by themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I
Yeah,
was I was thinking like some basic repairs and stuff, and
yeah,
things that might be a little bit daunting for somebody that has never worked on a vehicle before, and may not have the space to do it in. Uh, so yeah, I think that's awesome. That would be great. I mean, when I
yeah.
was living in an apartment and I didn't have access to a garage or whatever. I just had to go out on the parking lot and fix stuff. So,
I I'll give you two quick examples while we're on cars. So the wife's sedan, which we'll keep the brand out of the conversation to be nice here, but the window broke in the door. Well,
okay.
how do you fix your window in the door if it won't go up? You pop off the inside, you figure out why it's stuck, and you fix it. Right? There's a cable, or there's a bar with a lever and maybe the gear's bad. There's a handful of things that could be. Not true anymore. It's a motor, it's electrical, and furthermore, they had riveted the frame on the inside of the door on. There was no way to pop it off. You had to drill out the inside of the. They did not make it maintenance friendly. So it's
Uh,
not in our mind. They don't want you fixing these vehicles yourself.
yeah, you're right about that. I had to deal with that recently on a car repair myself. I
Yeah.
took the door panel off and then it was for the door latch,
Hmm.
and they did exactly like you said. The door latch is riveted in there, so I had to drill out the rivets and
Right.
put bolts in there, replace them with bolts and nuts. But yeah, it is aggravating.
But we're back to you and I are still enjoy fixing our own stuff, and even if say it is a task that you've not done yourself in the wood shop, or maybe you want to get in, and have you ever used one of those big CNC mills, the metal mill?
I actually never have actually used
So you
a
have
CNC, big CNC, like 4-axis machine.
exactly four
Yeah.
axis machine. They have three and four and five, and that just is how many different axes does it work on at once? How complicated of a piece can you make? Um, a three axis being less complicated than a five axis for those who don't know. But you have additive and subtractive technology. Well, a 3D printer is additive. You're adding stuff to make a piece in layers. Whereas these mills is you get this block. I always like to use the Terminator movies as the example. You get this block of metal, and then it goes through with the drill bits and stuff, and it cuts that metal up to turn it into the widget that you're trying to make or whatever. And how exciting would that be to put something in the computer? So we'll teach you how to do that. You can go find an image that somebody else has already made, or we'll teach you how to make the image in a 3D modeling software. uh, will be part of what you're learning to do. And then at the end of the day, you've made the one example I think we're going to do first for folks once we have it. And I'm hoping to have a CNC mill in here by the summer, but it would be like a metal pin. Yeah, that was something that they used to do over at the low mill facility. They would make these metal pins, and you would learn a lot of different skills making that pin. And then once you've made the pin, now you can go on and make what you want to go make.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and parts for your car is what made me think of this as we were talking. Is now all of a sudden you need to make a part for your car, a gear or a handle, and you could do this on the CNC, and it might just take an hour.
Yeah, yeah. So I do have a funny story about that. Well, myself, I've never been able to get the access to work on the CNCs. I had friends that did in college, and they were in the machine shop. They did all their levels of certifications and were able to operate the machine and everything. But I had one of my buddies broke the probe tool that
Hmm.
was the touch probe for the CNC, so it would know it not to interfere with things and run into things in space, because he didn't. He hit the release for the tool and didn't realize he had to hold on to it so that it doesn't fall down.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely you need to be trained well on how to operate the machines, or the tooling is quite expensive and can be quite devastating if you break a tool like that.
And I know we're talking more about self reliance, but you could look at it a little bit on the flip side here, having a facility where you could take some classes and learn how to use this CNC machine, all of a sudden could get you a job that maybe you dreamed of going in and building planes. You know, you wanted to go in and work at one of these aircraft manufacturers. That's what you wanted to do. Well, now you you you're always in that you're not qualified to do a job, or you're overqualified to do a job. So a place like here is a place where you can come in and teach yourself the skills that you need to learn to go get that dream job that you've always wanted.
I've
I
talked
remember.
about that on the podcast before. We had a guy that's in our community that he tells a story that he traded some beers with a friend to learn some welding skills.
Oh,
So
great skill.
yeah, that would definitely be something creative to do, especially if you wanted to apply for a job. If you could give them like your portfolio, basically, like
Mm,
these are some things, some parts that I've already machined, and I already know how to
exactly.
input the code, and I know how to work with this machine, and that was something that came across my radar. There was this one guy. His YouTube channel. His name is Stuff Made Here, I believe, and he was in an interview with Formlabs. They are a stereolithography 3D printing company,
Wonderful.
and he submitted his resume. His resume was emailed to the owner of the company by submitting software code and giving like the demonstration of the code in on a website that he built, and he was just able to point him to the website and show him the demonstration of the software to basically
Awesome.
prove his capabilities for the job that they were looking to hire a position for. So, and
That
they wouldn't even take his resume before that. Like he went through all this and did this to be able to get into the company because it was something he was like super interested in, or these SLA 3D printers, because they're much higher quality printers, and the technology is just fascinating to him. But you know, nowadays you have to do something. You know, if it is that dream job, like you got to be super creative on how you're going to get their attention. And I think, yeah, if you could do a demonstration of some kind of your competence in some way to people that you haven't met before, that I mean, in my book, that would be awesome for somebody that I'm trying to hire.
Well, and you think about it, if somebody all of a sudden goes in and they do an OJT job example, and you're able to walk up to this wall of equipment and you've been using it in a makerspace or something now for a month or 2 or 3 months, and you're able to walk in, set it all up, you know what they'll say, hey, go grab this tool, and you go grab the tool. Because all of these careers, all of these skills and trades, you have your own lingo, right? You get into there, and these just different words for tools in the machine shop. I mean, they have 1,000 different tools in that machine shops. They have files that all have different names, and you have to know that. You have calipers, and how do you know, what are the different calipers and what are they used for? How do you use them? It's not apparent. So I think a lot of that is just giving people an opportunity to learn how to use that. If it is for a job, that's wonderful. But otherwise, it might just be they want to learn it. And I love that. I mean, I think humans as a rule want to learn stuff. And we get stuck in a rut of people being trying to entertained all the time. That's a big pet peeve of mine. And instead of thinking and wandering around and thinking and coming up with thoughts and ideas, we're watching TV, or you know, they're on social media. I'm not taking away. I love our podcasting, and I love YouTube too. So I don't want to take away from stuff like that. Well, doing videos that people can watch on whatever platform they want to watch, I guess, would be a better way to say that. But um, I want to have an environment where people can come in and teach themselves things and learn from others to move forward.
Well, you're right. I mean, we do spend a lot of time in front of screens nowadays, and it is really cool to have, especially like-minded people that you can be around, that you can learn from, and just have that one-on-one personal connection with somebody. It is very powerful, I think, and it does it helps with a lot of stuff. You know, we're meant to be social beings. You know, myself, I define as more of an introverted type dude, but you know, I love hanging around like-minded people, and I'll talk your ear off. You know,
Right.
once I got somebody that you know is interested in some similar things, and it really does. Like I started to go to some conferences and things in the past few years, and I find it very refreshing. You know, if you are in a space where you know where you are feeling alone, that it does help to find other people that are like-minded, and helps kind of give you a kind of a new lease on things. Um, One of the things that going back to the cars, we have Jack Dub in the audience saying that used car prices went up. All the new ones with the fuel efficiency gadgets break too much. We've got a lot of sensors, so yeah, we got more people that are aggravated with all that kind of stuff.
So let me ask this question: what does it take to build your own car? I mean, I know there's all these safety regulations, and the car industry has added on all of this stuff that they've done it to prevent people from going out and make cars in some cases. I mean, it's safe, and I'm all for that. But maybe all you got to do is buy an old frame, and that meets some of the safety criteria. So I would love to sit down and get a project together saying, well, what are the minimum things you got to buy from, so let's say, a manufactured car, because maybe we can't do that in the lab ourselves here. Um, and then have a car that you can end up knowing everything there is to know about that. You can fix every piece on that car because you made every piece, but maybe the frame or maybe the steering column is, kind of coated different than the rest of the car. But I know people have made kit cars, and they do that with fiberglass, right?
Yeah, in fact, I interviewed a guy that was in the that's in the community here, and he had his own DIY supercar that he built. And
Awesome. I would
what
love it.
what he did exactly how you're talking about is basically created his frame by uh, bas- basically taking like plywood and then how you would create, like if you're gonna do calculus on a volumetric shape or whatever, you cut it into
Right.
sections, right?
Yep.
And so that's what he did is he had different sections of the profile, and he
Mhm.
cut out pieces of plywood to create the profile, and then sandwiched them together, in the correct pattern, and was able to create a mold so that he could create his fiberglass body. And then he documented the whole project on.
I'll have to go back and watch that one. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. He's over in the UK,
Mhm.
um, and documented his DIY supercar project. Is just a passion of his to build his own supercar, and yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to is uh, talking about what you just said is like taking you have to take the actions right in the real world. Like you can have a lot of the ideas and stuff and have them on paper in your designs or whatever, but like there is something to building stuff and kind of being in the zone. It's almost a meditative process when you're working on the thing.
Yep.
uh, I realized that over the break that we had, we're just got back to work, but I had like a week off and was spending the whole week building a chicken tractor that I was
Oh yeah.
super into building for a while, and finally had the time to work on it, and was doing that all over the break, and I loved it. You know.
Make sure you bring pictures to the next meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a bunch of pictures, so um, yeah, gonna
And
make
did you
a
add the wheels on one of the corners? I mean, I know my mom's big into chicken coops, and she's been building them for decades now, and they're always, I mean, these are some pretty spoiled chickens at her house. So I don't know about your chickens. Is this like the Hilton of chicken coops, or is it just a functional chicken coop?
well, I'll show you right now.
Oh, okay.
Let's see if I can bring this up here.
Oh
But yeah,
yeah, there you go. You have the wheels on it
here we
on the
go.
backside. Yeah.
This is the chicken chickshaw,
Yeah.
and a little bit over engineered. It's
Of
pretty
course.
heavy,
Yeah.
but
All right, guys, this
well,
is the
sorry,
chick show.
sorry about that. That was a
That's all right.
little sound, but here's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah.
I took an old project that a friend gave to me for
Yep.
his chicken coop and disassembled it and salvaged it and reused it in this Mark One chickshaw that I built.
A great name for it. Love it. Yeah.
But yeah,
Well done. Well done.
we've had neighbor dogs that have killed my past couple flocks of chickens, and I was just kind of tired of that happening. So this
Yeah.
one is kind of built like Fort Knox.
So when you get ready for it, we could start putting in electrical traps for the dogs. You know, that electric fence that you see all the time, it's to keep the dogs in. It works really well, but maybe
Yeah.
we shouldn't talk about this in public though.
Well, I have a electric poultry net that I finally invested in to make sure that none of the neighbor dogs if they do find their way over there, they're getting a
Little
surprise.
shock, that's right.
Yeah.
Just a friendly reminder they need to stay in their own yard.
Yeah. That is a difficult thing in some neighborhoods. I've was talking to some other friends of mine over the weekend. They told me a story that they lost 40 something of their chickens from
Yeah, all the
neighbors'
time.
dogs getting out and just terrorizing them. And the thing about the neighbor dogs is that they don't eat them, they just kill
Yep.
them.
Yep.
So it's super aggravating, especially
So
if you have a
when are
pretty
we
big
getting
flock.
eggs then? Are you going to have spare eggs out of those chickens? And
Yeah, man.
I
So
want to get down for a dozen.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the I will be getting some chickens. I put the word out on what chickens I should get. I've had some suggestions on Barred Rock variety or Brahmas, and there are a couple different varieties which are supposed to be pretty good egg layers. I did have Rhode Island Reds, but yeah, I plan on getting the chickens soon now that I have the space all set up for them, their shelter and everything. So they'll be working in a garden area and composting, helping scratch up and compost and doing all that kind of stuff. So, yep.
I'll get some opinions from the family on what they have before you make your final decision, and I'll have her take a couple pictures of the Mark 7 that she has. You know, the 5-star Hilton that her chickens live in is you. I mean, I think it's bigger than the house now. She just moves it around the yard and
Oh, wow.
counterbalance.
Yeah, they're super awesome. I've been wanting to build this chickshaw design for a while. I've seen it on. Speaking of people's YouTube channels where you can kind of learn stuff, I think that is a cool thing for YouTube is able to look up a video and see how
My
people
favorite
is
thing.
doing something, and you're able to teach yourself so many things. And Justin Rhodes on YouTube's a big homesteader, and he presented the chickshaw design. And ever since I saw that episode and him showing the chickshaw, I was like, I gotta build one of those eventually. So glad I was able to finally do it, and excited to try it out because I'd like to, be able to allow the chickens to free range and everything, and then they'll go back in the tractor, and then it makes it easier to move it around the yard. We did it for a while just by dragging something along the grass and doing it that way, but there's issues with that are not so fun. You can get the chickens caught up in that, and different things can happen doing it that way. But so yeah, excited about this one. Fort Knox Chickshaw Mark Mark One design.
I love it. Love it. And I hear we're going to build a greenhouse too here at the space. I'm open to ideas. We have that weird hilly angle next to the building, and I'm thinking we can do something like a pallet floor base, because you could stack like one pallet at the top of the hill and then two pallets halfway down the hill and then three pallets, kind of do the little stack to level the whole thing off, and then throw some plywood on it, and we've got a floor for a greenhouse right there.
Yeah, that would be
I
cool.
Now that would be north facing though, and I know everybody always tells me you got to have south sun, so I don't know. I'll have to rely on you experts on. Our family may have grown things, but I don't know if the green thumb was passed down to me in full force. So
Yeah, you probably don't want to put it on the north side because you're not
yes.
gonna you're not gonna get enough
Well,
sun.
maybe we can grow like mushrooms and potatoes. Maybe.
Mushrooms probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you could probably grow some mushrooms back there for sure.
We're open to suggestions to any of your listeners have ideas.
Yeah. So one of the things that you guys were talking about is possibly setting up some like or hydroponics or something in the old
Well, you tell me how realistic
makerspace.
this is. I was thinking about doing like little hydroponic walls. You know, you see they do these in cities and these buildings. People walk in and they have these gorgeous walls of plants, and some of them can be decorative, but I think it would be great to have all your herbs for your cooking in your kitchen or whatever. And I'm always dreaming of making a pizza oven. I've had these fire bricks laying around now for a year and a half and still haven't made a pizza oven. So I want to go build a pizza oven and have enough hydroponics plants that you could just go pick what you wanted to put on your pizza.
Yeah, there's I
That's
did.
kind of my idea is you have everything you need there except for maybe the dough.
Yeah, there's a lot from what I understand. There's a bunch of different companies that are creating vertical
Right.
hydroponic type things, and there was a really good one that I knew of a while back, but I can't really think of it off the top of my head. But yeah, there's lots of different ways. Basically, you just have to circulate the nutrients through some kind of way of supporting the plants in a growing media of some type. And there's one of the popular methods is a nutrient film technique, where you are just kind of suspending the plant above the water, and then the roots find the water, and doing it that way. And then there's also a way where you can put a like an air bubbler in the water, and it kind of like as the bubbles pop, they splash up and get the nutrients up to the roots of the plant. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it.
Well,
Um,
and I wouldn't mind trying a couple of them. Put up two different walls and let's do some testing. Which one works out well, right? Which one?
yeah,
What are the tricks of each style? I mean, that's part of the fun is you get in here and you figure that out, and then once you get it perfected, you could say, hey, you could do this at your house. Put it in your kitchen. Put it on the
absolutely.
porch. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's not. Yeah, it's not that bad, and definitely wouldn't be too hard to set up a few different types of designs. I know that James in our group, he built his own little hydroponic setup with just a little cooler and a pump, and then a gutter, a piece of a gutter, I think, and then so like something that goes over the top of the gutter that he can put these little net pots in for the plants, and some kind of growing media, probably like some of those clay pebbles. I
sure.
think they're called hydroton,
Hmm.
and you can just directly sow your seeds and stuff like that. Worked with a buddy of mine that does aquaponics for several years for his family because his family was having health issues and they wanted to grow their own food, to try to help with some of their health problems. And started doing aquaponics, and he plants directly in this river rock, and you can just directly put your seeds in there with the aquaponics system. And that's actually one of the designs that I started to work on. I'd like to bring to the makerspace is
The
dis-
prototype of that, yeah.
the prototype that he came up with, called the Urbanite Aquaponics System, which is he designed for people that would be in like a suburban area that didn't want to didn't have a whole lot of space, but wanted to try to do aquaponics. Normally, when you're talking about this, a lot of people do these systems that are, made out of rain barrels, and they're pretty large and everything like
Right.
that. So this is it's like a 3 foot by like 7 foot type thing
Sure.
with an aquarium, like a 55-gallon aquarium, and a growing bed and everything. So uh,
I can't wait to see it. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, I
Uh,
just gotta find time that I can go down to my property and go and load that up and then bring it up to the makerspace.
sure.
So, so I'll get a weekend that I can dedicate to doing that and get it up there.
You did a slight tangent, but you did mention something that is also a core philosophy here at the Monkey's Wrench is the reimagine and repurpose.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody always knows reduce, recycle, and reuse. That's kind of the ones we all grew up with. Well, it turns out that people aren't recycling near as efficiently in the United States as you think they are. Hopefully, your community is doing greater than what some other communities are, but you think it's going to be recycled, and it turns out that a lot of times it's not. It's just put in a different pile. Um, and left there, or it can't be recycled the way that you thought it could be recycled. Um, but repurpose and reimagine, it was a TED talk that I saw. I don't know if anybody ever watches TED talks, but I love a good TED talk.
yeah.
And this person went into talking about repurposing and reimagining things of when something's at the end of the life, you reuse it and turn it into something else. Maybe it can't do what it originally did, but you come up with a new way to do it. I mean, the floating barn wall behind us is a great way of reimagining this. You know, it's an art project, but we wanted to define this space here, and it does that beautifully, as part of defining the space and reimagining this. And this was old barn wood laying on the ground that somebody asked, "Hey, can I have that?" And they're like, "Sure, take all you want." Um,
Ye-
Reimagining that is awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. Me personally, I guess it may be genetic or something. My grandfather is kind of a hoarder. He's from
Mhm,
the Depression era. And I guess that kind of got passed down to my dad and to me because I tend to hold on to some things that I think are probably useful. And they end up being, maybe sitting there for a little too long. But
mhm,
but that was how I built that little chickshaw was just out of scrap lumber and
mhm.
some stuff that people donated to me to try to make something useful out of it. So, I mean, on one hand, it can be detrimental, especially if you got too much stuff piling up, and you gotta find something to do with it. So, I think it is good to go ahead and like if you are doing that to go ahead and turn it into something useful.
Mhm.
As quickly as you can, I think is good because I do think at some point it does turn into a hoarding kind of situation, and it turns into a little bit of an issue. But yeah,
It,
it's something I'm working on is try to get better at trying to tackle the projects and use the materials and make it into something cool, and try to upcycle the stuff that I have
right.
laying around instead of going to the hardware store and buying something.
Just
Um,
buy more property. Have more property to keep more stuff.
well, I tried that, and then I had some.
Get
I
getting
had
out of
some
get too much scaling there,
I
right?
had some thieves go and steal some of
Oh,
the
that
stuff that I
yeah.
had. So, you got to also secure the property. So, yeah, it becomes an issue. But yeah, I do like trying to take stuff that has been discarded and try to turn it into something useful.
Mhm.
So one of the Jack in the chat says that having chickens is his new dream, and we got Sasha in the in the chat saying that hydroponics is a definite for me. So I know Sasha is your wife there.
Uh-huh. She's very excited about the hydroponics wall. And you guys in the group we have there have been teaching us the difference between hydroponics and aquaponics, which feel free to elaborate. I think all of your listeners probably already know the difference, but it was new to me that they were different things and slightly different approaches on how to do them. Um,
Yeah, aquaponics is the big difference is that you're using the fish to generate the nutrients for the plants. So and now it becomes like a pond basically. So it becomes its own ecosystem in aquaponics. So you're the
and that would be outside as a general rule, whereas hydroponics could be either.
so aquaponics can be indoors, but you I mean you have fish. So if you keep an
You're gonna have
aquarium
a fish
if
smell
you,
in there.
if
Yeah.
you keep an aquarium inside, the same things apply as basically in an aquarium. But
Could you use an aquarium as a mini aquaponics lab? If you had
yeah,
a
that's what
bunch of
this.
saltwater fish, or is it only freshwater fish for aquaponics? I would assume
Yeah, I don't know
it
if
had
you
to be
could do
freshwater.
saltwater fish. If you do saltwater fish, you could do like saltwater type plants, but like seaweed or
Oh yeah,
coral or something like that.
plant.
I do know a guy that does super elaborate aquariums. It's like one of his big hobbies, but those systems are very interesting too because they do actually work on similar principles as aquaponic systems if you're trying to grow food out of them. That they use a bacteria in the system to help keep the balance of the pH and everything,
Mhm.
and also to keep the fish healthy and the water quality good. So that's the main acting thing in aquaponic systems is it's a live system, and
Mhm.
so you can't really do anything that would be detrimental to biology in the system because it'll destroy the system. So it works like your gut, similar to your gut. There's these aerobic bacteria that are helping to convert the waste, the solids, and everything in the system to clean up the water and provide the nutrients to the plants that are in the system. And the plants are then helping to clarify the water even more, and it all kind of benefits each other. It's kind of like a symbiotic relationship.
I love it. I love the whole concept of getting down to the basics, and yet there's still some science to learn there.
There's a
You've got
lot
a
of
lot.
science in
You
gardening, actually.
people don't realize how much science is in there that and some of them were lessons learned. I can still remember a lot of the lessons my family taught grandmas and moms and so forth, and they always had some weird catchphrase. Well, that catchphrase was science, don't plant before this or before the first the mayflowers come in and then you can plant. Well, that probably told them the temperature of the soil, right? Isn't that how the plants come up at certain times of the year? They go by the temperature of the soil or where the sun's coming in, and
Yes,
they
it
know that
is.
like-minded plants grow at the same time.
It's very fascinating that
Yeah.
a seed can stay dormant for so long until the right conditions are met, and then it will spring to life when the correct temperature is there and all the conditions it needs to thrive are available. That the plant comes to life. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I have
That little seed can stay dormant and then come to life out of nothing.
I have a confession to make here. I do buy the Farmer's Almanac at the end of every year and read through their advice for the next year. Don't always follow that advice, but I do read it, and I find that whole 200 years or however many years, 100 and some odd years that almanac's been made here in the United States, just amazing.
You know what? When you really get into gardening, and people that have been doing it for a long time, a couple that I know through our network, they use like celestial things to help them plant. So the movement of planets and things like
Oh yeah,
that.
the solar cycles. I'm a big fan of
Yeah,
knowing how the solar cycles are running, and
yeah.
um, yeah, who am I to know the answers to any of that? There's people who know a lot more about it than I do, but I love learning anything and everything to know about all of those sort of topics, especially when it gets you to where you can keep your own garden. I like that idea. I grew up. We always had a garden, and then my wife and I've been trying to run a garden, and my son, we've been trying to run a garden for 10 years in this red clay here in Huntsville, and we failed every year. So I'm counting on you and your team to help us out. And we're going to actually grow something this year that survives until we consume it.
That would be great. You know what has really worked well for us is growing butternut squash.
Butternut
And
squash, yeah.
butternut squash loves this type of weather, especially in the summertime, and it will soak up all the sun that you can give it. And especially if you grow the squash and the corn together,
Uh-huh.
it works out really well. And the key is composting,
Yeah.
doing your own local compost, and that's something that I'm trying solve with getting the chickens is to do this chicken tractor on steroids system,
Hmm.
which basically helps to accelerate compost because the chickens are in with your compost pile, which is a cubic yard of compostable material. And you put the feed in there for your chickens, and then every week you move the cubic yard of compost and you flip it, and it's supposed to give you really fast compost because the chickens are pooping in there and it's accelerating that composting process. So
Is that the one where you're supposed to throw leaves in every so often? Is that a different system or similar?
yes, you can keep adding material to it, and then at the end of the week, after you've added all that material, then you remove the cage, you move the chickens, and you start a new pile, a new cubic yard pile, and you start the. It's basically like a lasagna process,
Hmm.
like
Right.
you add water, and then you add your compostable organic matter. You can add leaves, pine needles, like yard waste,
Right.
grass clippings, like all that kind of stuff in there. What's interesting is about compost is that this comes from permaculturist Jeff Lawton that teaches a lot of composting is that anything that has lived can live again through compost, which is
It's a good rule. Yeah.
pretty cool. So the building of the soil is super important because there's all these microorganisms and stuff that are allowing the plants to have like a communications network in the soil, and it allows for healthy plants. And just like you're saying with the red clay, when you have compaction in the plants aren't able to like spread their roots out so easily, and so they're not able to like get everything that they need out of the soil. So they actually need like broken up loose soil. So that's like kind of number one to start on a new piece of land, is to actually break up that compaction in the soil.
And we tried to do that where you did the raised beds, and I think we even had a system which maybe you're familiar with is where my son went in and put in rotten wood down as a layer, and then added soil on top of that and compost on top of that,
Oh
and
yeah, it's
then
like a hugel
we
culture.
raised it. What is it called?
It's called a hugel culture.
Yeah, so
Like you
he did the
bury rotted
research on
wood.
it, did a whole thing, and I think we were growing potatoes that year, and we actually did get some potatoes out of this. It's one of our more successful attempts here, but then we had critters come in and eat them all.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was our other problem is we're like, okay, well, how do you defend from critters now? And which critters am I defending from?
So these electric nets work well for that.
Okay,
That I found. I actually put one up around our garden this year because we had the same issue. We had some stray woodchucks trying to eat
woodchucks. Yeah, I do have woodchucks.
our squash and our cucumbers and our corn, and so I got that electric net up right in time, and they got the first couple shocks, or the first shock they had of that thing, they stayed away for the rest of the time. So
They're fast learners.
yeah, so that worked out. I mean, when this thing hits you, man, it'll light you up.
Well,
So
you didn't do the whole testing at first, right? It's not like
uh,
the police where they gotta get
I
tasered.
had to touch it, man.
Oh, you did?
I
You
tested
you
it.
fell for it.
I have a tester, but like one day I was out there. When they ship it to you, the battery doesn't have a whole lot of charge on it. So when I first set it up, I did touch it and just tested it out, and it was like, "Hey, this isn't that bad."
Yeah.
When the sun is on it, and it's a solar rechargeable battery one from
Ah,
these Premier One guys that sell them, and when the sun was hitting it, and I tried it again, boo! Yeah, it lit me up pretty good. I was like, it's not gonna be that big of a deal, but it ended up
so
lighting me
for a
up
little
pretty good.
woodchuck though, they're gonna know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll hit them pretty hard. Oh man, so we had Normock join the program, and when we were talking about hoarding, he said my problem is once I get rid of something, it seems like just a couple months later I'll need it.
I think there is some law for that, like some form. There's Murphy's law, something bad's going to happen, and then there's that law that 5 minutes after you get rid of something, you're going to need it, or 5 minutes. after you buy something, you're going to find it 50% cheaper somewhere else.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the when this whole when everything kicked off in 2020 with all the lockdowns and everything, you had all these prices go crazy, and it was one of those things that if you had stashed away some stuff and bought some stuff before all that happened, then you were sitting on some good prices for that. But yeah, there have been opportunities. We had somebody in our group was tearing down a house. They were going to pay to get it demolished, and it was a few of us that went out there and helped tear down the house, and we were able to salvage a lot of the wood out of that
Hmm.
from that demolition. So little opportunities that present themselves like that every now and then too.
Yeah, and we do our one of our other businesses like post construction cleanup stuff, and a lot of times you'll go into there and they may be remodeling, or maybe it's not a new building but a building that they need it gutted, and you're like, hey, what about all these tables or all this stuff in that building? And they're like, we don't care, it just needs to be gone. So we'll come in with trailers and go grab a bunch of this stuff and repurpose it. A lot of it can be saved. Now, some of it needs to go into the dumpster. Don't get me wrong. Um, but you think about some of these restaurants when they go out. We ended up with a gorgeous set of metal tables that they use, restaurant level tables. Um, Now, some of the legs were broken on them, so you needed to have a place to fix them. So
Yeah.
you bring them in, you fix them all up, and now you have a repurposed table. Um,
Yeah, you're right. You can get a lot of good stuff from these construction sites, getting rid of the materials off of construction
just a little
sites.
bit of work, and then they pay you to do it. That's what's wonderful is you find these areas where you can get paid to get the stuff you would have went and got for free anyway.
Yeah, it is a common theme on this podcast. We've talked to several guests about it that our society is so wasteful the way it is right now, and there are a lot of opportunities if you can go and find a waste stream and see if you can put it to your own benefit.
Yeah, there's we're gonna try to set up a couple recycling distribution centers here. I mean, aluminum cans become an easy one. People can drop them off here, and we'll turn them in, and any proceeds from recycling the aluminum cans just go back to the nonprofit. Um, but we're trying to figure out. Well, some people don't know how to get rid of some things properly, and maybe we can be a spot where you can drop it off here and then we can get rid of them in one trip or something like that. So I'm doing some research on that. Any suggestions from that from the group would be wonderful. I'm thinking of batteries and shoot. We found out a couple years ago the is it the fluorescent lights you're not supposed to throw in the trash can. So there's a way to dispose of those that is better for the environment.
Was it because of
Right,
the mercury in them?
mercury, right? Yep. Yep, it was so we're trying to come up with kind of a wall of, hey, this is the right way to do it. And in our community, this is how you would do it. Or if we get into where the community doesn't have a right way to do it, then let's find a way to do it the right way, and we'll take that as a charge where we'll go figure that out. Now, in Sasha's case, she comes from a refinery town, um, uh, which was amusing because they had a they had the refinery for like gasoline and oil, and so they had these super hot fires, and you could bring anything to this place like once a month, and they burned it all, and it was eradicated, and there was no, it just went into the atmosphere. So I don't know if that was a good thing, but it
Yeah,
did go into the soil, but people would bring anything.
I remember that growing up that we had a burn barrel and we just burned
Yep.
random things in the burn barrel.
It's a good thing making fire, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know why we did that, but
We had a dump
it
on
was
the
just
farm.
back in the day, you know.
Yeah, we had a dump in the farm. I remember we had the burn barrel, and yeah, I'd spend my summers out there. I didn't necessarily live out on the farm myself, but we spent a lot of time out there. And I do remember there was a dump out in the back. You burned the trash. The dogs ate the leftovers. Wasn't this gourmet dog food that we feed our dogs these days, but they had leftovers.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one thing that was suggested here is Normock from the audience is saying build a maggot generator for your chickens. It'll smell terrible, but they work. I had one, but a hailstorm destroyed it.
Maggot generator. That's a new one.
I think I know what he's talking about. There's these black soldier fly larva composters that you can build, and you don't need to do anything. The black soldier flies find their way into the rotting food, and then they lay their eggs in there and everything. And the way that you build these things is you like kind of give them a chute to go in, and then they'll climb up the chute, and then you have at the end it's like they fall into a bucket, and then you can collect them and you can feed them to your animals like your chickens and stuff.
That reminds me of the worm farms. Do you know anybody raising worms?
uh I don't
Because they would
directly,
have the
but
soil, and they would have all these worms in the soil. We had one up near Sasha's hometown. They had a pizza farm, and as part of the pizza farm, they had a worm farm, and it ended up being the pizza business went out of business eventually, but the worm farm took off. And he built like a second building, and then he built a third building because people would buy these worms by the yard, all the soil with all the worms in it. It was like beautiful soil.
it's funny. It just reminds me of that scene in Dumb and Dumber where he's like, "I want to open a worm farm. You know what we're gonna
Oh,
call it? We got worms."
I've never watched that movie all the way through. It's been too tough for me. Um, but maybe I better go watch it now if I'm going to talk about a worm farm.
Oh, he was ahead of his time back then. He was
He
really,
was, he was,
he
yeah.
was really a genius
Yeah.
with the with the worm
Well,
farm
yeah,
business.
right. He obviously had some background here.
It is. It's super. Worm compost is super beneficial for the soil. The mucus layer that they leave behind and everything. It helps stabilize the soil and helps it hold water. From what I understand, one of the guys that Frank and I in the group have talked about bringing in is this guy Green Greg's is his YouTube channel, but he is a local guide to our area, and he does that and to
Oh,
give it
I would listen to him.
to
Yeah.
give us a presentation on doing the worm systems and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't believe it's that difficult. I have heard some people on their podcast talking about it, and I mean, you just have to keep adding like compostable stuff for them to eat.
Yeah, and honestly, I know my son and I, we went to, there's this farming group here in Alabama. I can't think of the name of it. It might come to me while we're talking. But the University of Auburn kind of hosts these talks, and you go out to all the local farmers, and every quarter they'll go out and do a meeting with them, and they'll do a lecture. And we got invited to one of these to go out, and it was for the peach farmers, and it was all for flowering fruit type of a thing. And it was amazing how knowledgeable and smart all of these farmers were. I mean, my son was blown away. He's like, these people are asking PhD level questions to these professors that have come in to answer questions. So they're going over, hey, this is how this works, and this is the invasion species that are coming in that you need to be worried about, and this is tactics that you can use to fight them. And you have 30 different variants of a peach, and you got to plant like 17 of them on any given year, just to be able to get some of them to come out. And going back to all of these different pieces of having a farm, do you want worms? Do you want black soldier flies, and all of these different pieces to come out? It We may be able to come in and have them come and do a lecture to me. I thought it was real interesting. The professors, when they came to that meeting, they were prepared. They did
Mm-hmm.
not walk into that meeting winging it. Sometimes they can show up and, oh yeah, my audience, I'll be able to wing this. They walked into there, they knew that they were going to be grilled by experts in the field, and that was pretty amazing, I think. And all of the farmers were entrepreneurs. And how do we fix our own irrigation questions? They were doing the drone swarms. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I've
For
heard
the
of
crop
drone
dustings.
swarms.
Yeah, they do it for the crops. For it wasn't pesticides. It might have been herbicides or something like that. But to put dusting over there, they have these smart drone swarms that they use to deal with the crops.
Oh wow.
You don't have to have a plane anymore that comes over and drops stuff. Hopefully environmental friendly, but you have these drones that can go out and do that for you. And now they're getting to where with AI, they could go in and check to see if a plant needs help. Pretty advanced stuff going on. And so now the farmers are like, we need somebody who knows this technology on the farm. The farmers are like, shoot, we're 80. We're not going to learn this technology well enough to make a difference. So I need to bring in somebody else who does.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the. It is quite interesting what the technology allows folks to do. That was one of the things that my last guest we talked about was, we have so many of these off the shelf kind of technologies now that things like the 3D printers or you could easily kind of get yourself a little DIY CNC mill and stuff now. Whereas think about a 3D printer, like if you were going to do or build a design using a CAD file or whatever, or something like that in the past, you would probably had to have made like a plaster mold or like a clay mold or something like that, and then
Mm-hmm.
you would have had to have taken that and created your own, taken dimensions off of that to build your like plastic injection mold machine and all that kind of stuff. Well, now you just got a file on your computer and you just print it out like you would. You're printing out something on the paper printer, so it takes away all that effort that would have gone into doing rapid prototyping, and you have that ability that you can have something print with your little machine while you sleep. An example that we talked about last time was a friend of mine started an Etsy shop, wood shop, by buying a little CNC, one of these little CNC mills, and he can set up that thing and do orders that he gets through his Etsy shop, and he can have this thing milling out little things while he's sleeping. So there is a lot of opportunity for folks right now to do cool stuff like that, to do cool things that people may want, may not necessarily need, but things that people want. But I was listening to a podcast today. It was like, that's one of the main reasons people do make purchases is because it's an emotional thing. It's
Yep.
something they want. They think it's cool.
Yeah. Too many people are buying what they want and not what they need or like or love. There's things that, for me, I have things I would go buy that I would love just to have around. But you mentioned the 3D printer. I mean, they're 3D printing houses now.
Yeah.
That's amazing, and it's in use. It's a real thing at this day. And how you're going to do space travel, going back to the beginning of the podcast here, 3D printers are part of that. You're going to have bays full of material, and they're going to 3D print. They'll have their normal things that they're coming to make, sure, but any problems they have, they're going to solve using the machines that they bring that they know how to use.
Would you take a trip to Mars if you had the ability?
It's a one-way trip, and now that I spent all
Yeah.
of that, for me, I would be a settler. Um, uh, I, if it was just me and there wasn't a family involved, I probably would go. Uh, Now that I know about space travel, I don't know if I would survive the trip.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the people going are going to be phenomenally conditioned and in shaped individuals, and they have a chance. Um, for those of us who may not be in the best shape of their lives anymore, our chances are much less. and that's just to get there. I mean, once you're there, you got to actually work. It's going to be hard work the whole time you're there.
Yeah.
What watching the movie Martian or reading that book was a good example of, and they glossed over a few challenges that are part of the Mars trip, but
Well,
they did
yeah,
cover
yeah.
a
I
lot of the other
mean,
ones.
yeah. I mean, think about going out in the woods and just trying to make it on your own out in the woods on the Earth. You know.
Hmm.
Now do that up on Mars where it's not
Right.
meant for you to live
Yeah, yeah. Well, making fire all of a sudden might be a bad idea in, in some of the environments you're there. Well, didn't he have to try to make fire in that movie? He tried to make fire and he couldn't. All of his material was resistant.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember that. I guess it was a book before it became a movie, but the movie was pretty good, especially the part where he did have to figure out, oh, I'm running out of food. What can I do to get
Right.
food? And he had to make his own little water generator with the hydrogen and oxygen mixer, and he was able to create a little patch, a potato patch that he could live off of. That was pretty. That was pretty cool.
It was pretty for you and I. That was a wonderful movie because it shows that all these skills are useful skills, and you don't have to have a disaster for these skills to be useful in your life. Some of the time is just you're being self-reliant. You're taking care of yourself, and in the case of some communities, you have people with different skills. You and I were chatting a little bit earlier. One person may be a wonderful wood woods crafter, and the other person's a blacksmith. Both of those skills can take years to learn to get really good at, and being able to share those skills and even teach people rudimentary parts of it. Hey, I can teach you how to make nails. Uh, na- Making nails isn't that hard as a blacksmith, but you watch somebody who does it and they make it look easy, but it turns out that it took a lot of skill to get to be that easy.
Yeah, there was a guy on YouTube that was testing himself, kind of challenging himself. Like, could I make a toaster? Just like
Right.
from the materials that you could get around, and like, could I figure out the processes and all the things that it requires to make a modern toaster? And he was
Hmm.
like, he figured out it was like extremely difficult to do that. Like to take the raw materials and turn it into, do the processes to make the toaster and all that kind of stuff with the injection molding of the plastic and the filaments for the heaters and building the structure of it and getting it all to work and everything, and figured out that was very difficult. So it's like one of those things where if there was some kind of huge disaster or whatever, our society, could it rebuild itself? There's a lot of specialization. People are specialized in a lot of different things in our society now. So yeah, having some rudimentary skills and being able to build like basic stuff, I think is important skill, because we do kind of live on a bit of a fine threshold on how everything stays together in this society.
Yeah, I mean, just having some simple preparation. I think most people having 40 days in reserve. I mean, that was think about going back to the farm. They had a cellar. We canned our own food. I mean, there was probably, I don't remember anymore. My little kid memory might be making it bigger, but I remember going down in there and it looked like years of food down in that root cellar. It was an actual root cellar.
Yeah.
Um, and canned, and it was labeled by when it was put in, so they kind of could look at it and say, we probably should eat that now. It may not make it another year. um, but I think all these natural disasters that we're seeing coming around, the odds of being able to take care of yourself for 2 or 3 weeks to me is pretty high these days. And your community could get isolated. Now we're a little spoiled in Huntsville. We are the headquarters of the Material Command for the Army, so we actually literally have a disaster uh, organization here in our city. So we're probably a little safer than most. But good habits are still. What about that ice storm we just had? How many
Yeah.
people were driving around town without a blanket or a coat in their car?
Well, you know what, Chris? I've
Uh,
been hearing stories of people that had their water they lost their water.
mhm.
A couple people
Simple ice storm.
I work with, yeah, they were greatly impacted from it.
Yeah,
So
and I can even take that back because we actually do cleanup for stuff like that. Many of those people are still without their water because all of the disaster companies, they're backlogged now. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
the
the one lady at work, she still doesn't have her water back on.
right. What did she do? What was her plan? Right.
She had to
Uh,
go to
uh,
her parents, yeah,
she would have to, and now that's part of it.
and
That's
go.
back
She
where
had to go get a hotel.
yeah, you and I talk about having people you can rely on and having a plan. In our case, we have a camper. We can go move out into the camper and have water in there or go plug in somewhere else if we had to. But um, those are real hard. If you don't think about it ahead of time, you're sure in the heck not going to solve that problem when it happens because everybody else has that same problem.
Right. Yeah, and they had to do these scheduled power outages
Yep,
when that
it
happened
woke me
because
up actually when it
it got
happened.
cold so fast. Even though they didn't last very long, it was an opportunity that we fired up our generator out here, and we had my parents had just installed a way to connect into their main panel of the house. So we were able to use it's a natural gas generator, so we're able to hook it up to the natural gas line. And when that power went down, I had to jump it. I had to jump the battery in the generator for the auto start with my Jeep.
Hmm.
But once I did that and got the gas tuned on it, that it cranked up and we were able to have some power when it was just so my mom can make some coffee. But
Right,
anyway,
right, right. You
anyway,
were able to prove that you were ready. Darn it!
yeah,
It was a good practice run for the
yeah,
real thing.
and we had talked the night before. We were like, well, it looks like it's going to get pretty cold, so maybe we could go ahead and get this generator set up and have it ready in case of the storm. It knocks out the power or whatever. And so it was there and it was ready, and we were able to use it and just at least test for ourselves, like, okay, you know, if we had to use this in a situation, like we know how to make everything work, and everything's going to work, and it's going to, or we've tested it a little bit here.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think those kind of things are helpful. I have talked to some friends, like in some of their purchasing decisions, and I'm like, you should have bought a generator
Mm,
instead of buying, your your porch furniture or whatever,
couch.
or
Or
your
go buy a
couch.
new
Yeah.
couch instead of finding somebody who no longer wants their old couch. Always find somebody buying new furniture. They become your new best friend because you get their old furniture.
That is very true. I can say that has come in handy for me because I have taken advantage of that myself, actually, with
Uh,
the the donated furniture. So um,
or make your own.
yes, I would be very excited about the courses doing that at the makerspace. So, what? How does somebody get in touch with you, like for how they're gonna do the becoming a member of the makerspace? Maybe we can talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, for the short run, I can give my cell phone out if you like. Um, but there is a website. It actually was in beta all of last week. It was actually supposed to come online today. I actually, prior to this podcast, I actually emailed him to see if it could go live during the podcast, but I do not see a response for that. So we should
Well,
have the website up and running tomorrow sometime, I would think.
well, yeah. As soon as you get that information, make sure that you send that to me, and I'll make sure it's in the description of the video so people can find it.
Yeah, I think, and it's the monkeyswrench.com and the monkeyswrench.org. We went ahead and bought both of those. Um, so it's up and running. It like everything that we're kind of doing. It's grassroots in the sense that over time it will get better. I thought it was just important to get up the first few pages so people knew where we were. 1317 Virginia Boulevard here in Huntsville, Alabama. Um, you can come by. I'm here a lot of the time, and if for whatever reason I'm not, some of the members are here. As the membership grows, you'll have more and more people coming in. It is 24/7 access. We have a keypad as somebody becomes a member. We'll do a little bit of a background check on somebody just to make sure, um, uh, that they're not coming in to do any harm to others, so to speak. That's the only thing we're really worried about. But we are open to anybody. It's a membership. Reaching out to community a little bit more. The Facebook page is the Monkeys Wrench. I think that link you should have. Um,
Yep.
yep. So the Monkeys Wrench is the Facebook, the Twitter feed. So all of our social media pieces will be on the website too, on the bottom and the footer there. So you'll be able to find us that way. We try to stay pretty active on Facebook at the moment. Not my favorite forum, as I call it, the face pages. Um,
Yeah.
but it does work for this type of stuff. So if people just want to know what's going on and they want to see it, um, we have. We're going to do a lot more videos over the course of this year, especially as people do projects. I mean, one of the projects that's been going on the last couple days is somebody is they got an old piano, electrical piano that wasn't really working right, and they've kind of fixed it up and got all of it working, and we're down to like the last few foot pedals that aren't working right, and we're kind of troubleshooting that as far as how do we get that up and there. And then it turns out that half the members know how to play the piano really well, and so now I don't even know if the piano's going to leave. It may stay here.
Oh wow.
So there's kind of uh, all of this stuff going on. And because of that, though, members are here quite a bit. So I encourage people just to come by during the day and in the early evening. But once you become a member, there'll be some training on the equipment. You have to show that you know how to use some of the equipment that's here safely, and that's all part of just becoming a member. And then members can teach advanced classes and actually make money on that. So we want people to know how to use the equipment safely. That's free stuff. Um, but if you're getting into more complicated, hey, we're going to design this fancy chair, and I'd be happy to do a chair making class. Or I think another one Sasha's going to do that is basically free. It costs money in the sense that she may have to buy some material for it that you would chip in to buy the material. But she's going to do is it terrariums, where you have the jar and all the plants are in there
Oh
and they
yeah.
live.
Yeah,
We
like a
have one
terrarium.
now at the house that's been alive for several years, um, in a closed environment, and that's kind of interesting little projects. But um, so those are probably the best ways at the moment, but more ways to come. Always open to other forums. I mean, do I do Instagram? Do I do Pinterest? You know, only I would rather be making stuff than worrying about all of that. So part of it is what time are we doing what at? Open to suggestions though for any of your members on where should we should concentrate on that.
I do know that is it people that can get access to the Discord when they become a member. You have a
Yeah,
Discord group.
actually, at the moment, and you're happy to put that link. I think it's still open to the public at the
Okay.
moment. We might end up locking that down a little bit more, just because you and I were talking about that. You ended up getting some bad spammers.
Yeah.
And so at some point, you might have to put a little bit of a wall in between the public and the membership. But right now, I think you can still get to that. Just sign in, and we might have a couple of the chat channels. I think are members only, but people could still go on and ask questions through that venue also.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Um. So yeah, tell me. I caught a little bit there. That you were from the north originally. So like, how did you, or somewhere up north? That.
So I moved. My parents went through a few divorces. They had a rough time deciding on who they wanted to be with for the rest of their lives. Now they did eventually decide, but as a young man, I would move between different households, and I would move between Illinois and Texas quite a bit over a 7 year period, and then eventually moved up to Michigan near Lapeer there. Michigan, if you know where Detroit is, not too far from Ann Arbor and Detroit.
Yeah.
Spent a half a summer there and found out that Michigan was the coldest place on earth, is at that time what I decided. Uh, and then we moved over to Buffalo area, a small community in between Buffalo and Rochester called Lindenville, New York. If any of the listeners might eventually chime on, graduating class of 48 folks,
Oh
really
wow.
small community. We had Mennonites down the street, and a wonderful place to raise a family. I spent my last 2 years of high school there. So when I say I'm up north, uh, that's kind of what I go by. As I spent the last 2 years there before I joined the service.
Oh, okay. Wow. So, how did you make your way down south then?
Well, good story. So I in the military for about 10 years, and get out and go to work for the family business. So my father built TV and radio and cell towers. So lots of concrete and steel work doing that. Did that for a few years, helping with him, and we had a slight disagreement on a business model. He liked building towers because that's what he knew, and I thought these cell phone things were going to do really well. And Moore's law taught me that the equipment down at the bottom of the tower was going to have to change. I was thinking like every 6 months, but it turns out because of manufacturing, they go out and build all of these cell phones. It's about every 2 or 3 years. That's where you get 1G, 2G, 3G. Now we have 5G today. Um, and then you also have regulations that have to change. So I switched off and did a bunch of that. And this is all in the St. Louis, Illinois area. Was where this was happening, Illinois side of St. Louis. Um, and met my wife and got married and had 3 children there. And then I decided it was time to leave the Illinois area, cornfields in the Midwest. After where I had been in life, it was a little quiet there, which for the folks that are from there, they love their quiet. So we moved to California
Oh
and
wow.
spent,
That,
yeah, that was a little bit of a culture shock
that's a
for
big
Sasha.
change moving from the Midwest out to
Oh yeah,
California.
yeah. We loved California, not so much politically, but we loved living in. The people there were wonderful. Um, everybody was hustling. Everybody was working. I mean, when you hear about people being lazy, you're not lazy in Southern California because you got to afford to live there. So everybody had a main job and 2 or 3 side hustles. It seemed like all the time in Southern California. And then we decided we just couldn't afford to live there the way we wanted to. And I did a little research, and Huntsville, Alabama was actually my second choice. My first choice was Corning, New York, actually, Ithaca area, the Finger
Oh,
Lakes.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
I watched a documentary about Ithaca. It was an interesting place.
it is a very interesting place, and some of that interesting part Sasha didn't appreciate. But the region itself had everything I wanted: a highly educated community because we had kids that were getting into middle school, high school years. We had homeschooled our kids for the last few years, and still firm believer in the homeschooling community versus public schooling. That's a whole nother topic, I think. Um, and then, but having an education system that could support them if they wanted to do other things was very important. Sasha grew up. She was an outdoors woman. She grew up fishing and going out duck hunting with her dad. Her dad raised her quite a bit. Um, so that was a big part. She wanted to have places to go out. Whether she wanted to fish or hunt didn't matter. She wanted the option. um, so she didn't want to do New York though, because she says, "Isn't there winter in New York?"
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
assured her there was winter in New York, and it was a real winter. It wasn't a pretend winter. They had snow, and so she goes, well, "What's option two?" And option two was Huntsville, Alabama, and uh, she had been there briefly on one weekend with me on a trip that I'd take to teach a class here.
Hmm.
I taught a class here. Actually, I think it was a convention that trip at the Von Braun Center. And so she'd come that weekend, and that was all she knew about the places. There was a space museum here, and that is a slightly long way of getting to how we got to Huntsville, Alabama, and the community. We wanted to have a small town feel, but a city, because she had
Okay.
left the cornfields in Illinois and got L.A. and city,
Wow.
and she loves city, and I like city too.
Yeah.
I like living in the countryside, but I like having all of the amenities of a city. So it's kind of, by amenities, I mean, museums. I love museums. I love some of the cultural aspects of a city, the symphony and the plays and all of that sort of things you get with civilization. So when I say self-reliant, I'm not trying to take away civilization. I love civilization.
Yeah.
Um, but Huntsville had all of those things and has only gotten better since we've lived here. We love it here.
Wow, yeah, and that was one interesting thing that you told me is that you wanted to work for museums or something like that as well, right? For a little
Well,
bit,
museum
or like
director, I wanted to be like an
the
archivist. I think
oh, okay, yeah, get
having
into
all
the
of those,
historical documents and stuff.
well, not just the documents. Think about all of the different things in a museum. They have to be stored. They rotate stuff out on display.
Yeah,
And they have, I mean, Smithsonian's a wonderful example, but even small museums may have things in storage and they'll rotate them out at different times. Or how do you store all these pieces of bones, pieces of wood, pieces of parchment? We have a boat here in Huntsville. What is the maintenance of taking care of some of these old things that you have that you want to preserve in their current state? There's a lot of science that goes into archiving that. I mean, now you hear stuff. People are like, well, just think of right now with us. What was it? Floppy disk versus CDs versus
we
DVDs
talked
versus,
about that recently. The
yeah,
all the old magnetic tape and stuff like
correct.
that. Transferring that over to digital stuff. And am I not mistaken that some places still keep backups on magnetic tape as well?
Oh yeah. Well, density of how much it could save on that is pretty amazing. I know places that still use magnetic tape for the backup because it's cheap. Um, Now, hard drives have become so cheap at the moment and are so reliable that maybe that's going to be changing here. Probably should change for a lot of companies. But when it comes to how much data you need to store in every day, then that will be decide what format you're using. But what file type you're using matters almost as much. Are you using a text file? Is PDF going to be a thing in 20 years?
Yeah, I like to have the physical books.
Well,
I
you haven't been by my place, so I actually have this thing, a library, and I saw an interesting article yesterday. A personal library is defined as somebody with 1,000 or more books.
I don't think I'm there yet, but
So we've made that a couple times over, I think.
wow,
Uh,
nice.
so part of the reason you end up with a makerspace, by the way, Greg, is you have too much stuff at home and you got to find a place to put it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely hear you on that. We had a couple of comments earlier about that from Normock and Rondon. It was like, what is it? The solution is the answer is to build more outbuildings in Horde.
That's right. You
Ron,
you and I definitely
Rondon.
are probably their target market for that conversation. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and then Normock is saying, I need more outbuildings. So,
Definitely can agree. And part of my goal here was some of the members coming in, they had money, so buying these tools wasn't the question. They've had successful career. They're smart people. They're good with their money. Um, they didn't have the space. They live in a city, and sometimes they even had the space, but they couldn't get past city ordinance to go build what they wanted to go build. Uh, and it turns out that now they can bring all their stuff here and set it up and share that stuff with other people. Now, sure, they want to make sure you know how to use that equipment, but I think that is wonderful. So now you don't have to go buy 30 meals for 30 people. We can buy two and share those two, and a lot cheaper for the community at large, for that matter.
well, beautiful. Well, Chris, thank you so much for spending the time with me tonight. Can you let the audience know again what's the best way of finding you, finding the Monkey's Wrench? How do they get in touch with you?
So my name is Chris Walls. My email address is chris@cbwalls.com. CHRIS at CBWALLS.com. Feel free to email anytime you like. And themonkeyswrench.com and the monkeyswrench.org is the website, and it should be going live this week. A little surprise it's not up today. So, and then there's a Facebook page with similar name, and there'll be all the social media links will be on the website this week, so that should get going. And I think you're going to have the Discord channel in the notes for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, and this has been Meadows and Makers podcast. Everybody, go check out the channel, the Tinker Tribe, on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe and listen for. I have weekly podcasts and try to bring on guests and people that are cool to kind of bring some bring some solutions into your life. So again, Chris, thank you so much for your time tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow for our meeting, our local meeting. So thank you so much.
It's been an honor.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. Love you guys. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your week, and go do something awesome. Be excellent to each other. Thank you. All right, let me go ahead and stop my streams. And that was